Listen, the Biden administration, the Democrats, went all in on the Ukraine war, and they lost. And this is a huge deal, but they don't want to talk about it. But many Trump voters do want to talk about it, and they are right, and they are correct. They are asking, what is this imperial war given us? How is it promoting anything positive in Europe, in the US, in the world? What are we doing there? Who's making the decisions? These are real, these are classic questions about government.
People focusing on Gaza and asking questions, they're actually starting to post also videos of all the Iraqi abuses and say, hey, look at the link, what's going on here. You see it a lot right now.
Exactly. So I think that as a civilization, we have matured. We are not the same innocent, clueless people we were 20 or 30 years ago. My personal feeling and my gut feeling is that we are going to have this war. But I don't think it's going to turn out the way Israel and the US hope for. Iran is gearing for war, for an all-out war with the West and the US. I can see it happening. And I think that I'm not so sure the Americans have decided that they are going to pursue this war, but they are letting things slide to this place. So they are not mainly, but not limiting Israel. So because Israel wants to involve the US in this war, they always escalate and do more and try to create more damage and provoke another reaction. And the US will be dragged into it eventually.
Good to see you guys here, Alon and Peter. Asal couldn't be with us today because she is not feeling too well. So last time we only had Asal on our show, Dissident Roundtable, and Alon could not come, and now it's switched around. So hopefully we can get both of them together soon. Um, so I wanted to talk to you guys a bit about everything that's going on right now, from of course West Asia to the elections. So how is the hangover going? Congratulations with your new president, Peter. And
Thank you so
how are you
much.
feeling? How are you feeling?
Uh, I'm feeling pretty numb. I mean, the thing is that back in 2020 in March and April, once it became clear that the Democratic Party was going to coalesce around Biden, uh, Sanders wasn't going to win the primary. All of this was kind of baked into the cake for me because by doing that, they were risking a Trump win in 2020. COVID probably was the key thing that pushed them over the edge. But the other worry was, well, 2024, even if they managed to win in 2020, if it's Biden, who's had his whole career on the right of the Democratic Party, is in the White House for 4 years, then there's going to be a lot of dissatisfaction, and Trump will win in 2024, or else there'll be an unacceptably high chance of that. And the only surprise really for me in these past 4 years was that Biden governed much more to the left for his first 2 years in office. He was borrowing a lot of ideas from the left wing of the party, but as soon as about he reached the middle of his term, his old instincts kicked in. The way he reacted to inflation was to follow the advice of right-wing economists. In terms of the messaging from the White House, they gave up on all of the promotion of the Build Back Better idea. They shifted back into austerity mode, and that's why there's all these idiots prognosticating. They're backward explaining the election. And all sorts of, stupid theories they have, oh, the Democrats went too far left. But if you just look at the really simple models that political scientists put together, like Shipping Tong at Fudan University, not too far from here, he made a model just of the economic fundamentals and predicted a comfortable Trump win. So you've got that, but then you also have the genocide, which is a really under-examined factor in all of the idiot fool pundits I've been reading. They're like, oh, well, the margin was so big. I don't think the genocide had anything to do with it. They don't get it. The biggest block of eligible voters in the US for almost every single election in the past 100 years are non-voters, people who choose not to vote, people who select none of the above by not voting. This election, we went down from the percentage of eligible voters who voted from 2020. And part of that is undeniably the genocide and people feeling like there's no point in voting. The other hidden factor is that took away the motivation of countless numbers of people who would otherwise have been volunteering, phone banking, door knocking, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was another massive hidden factor behind the loss.
Yeah, so I've always noticed that, and it's same happening in Europe. Every time the so-called left wins, we don't really have left parties anymore, at least not the ones that are close or in power. But they will always blame it in the reversed way. That is, they will always say we failed because we were not right-wing enough.
Yep.
So they will say, oh, you see, we were too woke, or we were too left, or people want more conservative values. People, the white working class is angry, so we should be more this and that. They always say that the reason is that they have to outdo the right in being right wing. And of course, the whole genocide, Gaza genocide, will be ignored, or that it will be used to blame Arabs for the Democrats to lose. So, what do you think, Alon? You're now part of a Trump country for a moment. How does it feel?
It feels excellent, actually. Much better than a week ago when Biden was still president. Which is, I mean, we kind of skip about the embarrassing parts. I mean, but Joe Biden was president, is still president until January. And this is such, I don't even know what to say about this. This is such a joke, a mockery of what government is and should be about and can be about. This is really, really strange. But I think what's happening now, as Peter was giving his lovely explanation of the internal aspect of what was going on in terms of the democratic demographic. I think that what we are seeing now, and I think this is a very good and positive thing that's happening, we are seeing bubbles bursting. So if the US, this big imperial machine of the US and Western Europe and some partners in the Pacific were able to create this facade of different systems existing in different bubbles separately, not connecting. I mean, foreign policy and domestic policy have nothing to do with each other. This is one of the bubbles we were told, right? What's happening in Iraq and what's happening in Los Angeles have nothing to do. They are not, or in Paris, or in Berlin, or in Canberra, for that matter. But now we are beginning to see, and this is a big, one of the big takeaways from the people moved to Trump. I mean, we only hear the Democrats explaining this. And of course, they are explaining it wrong, and they're trying to minimize the genocide. They're trying to paint Republicans as fascists and people who hate foreigners, who hate women. And I guess there is some of that, but there is a lot of other stuff as well. It's not just the economic. I can see among Republican voters and young Republican voters, people who are saying, listen, we've had enough of the empire. We don't want the military industrial complex running our lives and running government and shaping the world in a way that makes us look bad and makes us suffer negative results in a terrible way. So I can see there's a development of the political discourse, but not among liberal circles. They always remain the same. I keep the conversation stagnant and undeveloped, and always the same nonsense. You are chauvinists. You don't like Mexican. Oh, it's like 1990 or 1980 or whatever. But things have changed, and I think it's the genocide definitely contributed to this shift that people are the genocide, the influence of the Jewish lobby, which liberals won't talk about even under like the threat of a gun to the head. But we know it's happening, and people want to talk about it and are asking what's going on with this, what's going on with our foreign policy. So this very artificial separation between different scenes or different stages or different divisions of government, of policy, of reality, basically, are starting to blur. Because people are now understanding how we spend money, how we budget, who governs and how they govern. And this impacts foreign policy, and it impacts how we feel and how much groceries cost us. And people are starting to make this connection, which is a very good sign. Now, I'm not sure Trump is the perfect solution for this huge basket of problems, but at least we have a lot less denial. You won't hear it almost on CNN or MSNBC, but the people get it. And I give a lot more credit to Republicans because I myself come from the right wing, the Israeli right wing. I mean, fascism and hatred of Arabs and Palestinians was never my main thing. There were other considerations. For instance, if liberals care about equality, even if in the narrow sense that they speak about, how come we see in all the liberal strongholds always family members of the same people from the same families, the same faces, the same social class? How come the rest of the country is not represented? How come we only see people from certain neighborhoods in New York, around the Washington belt, and so on? So where is the representation? Where are the principles that you supposedly believe in? So the contradictions of the liberal propaganda machine is really crumbling, and this is like a big breakup.
I certainly hope so.
I don't think, just like Israel cannot go back to like 10 years prior, Israel cannot go back to being just a normal country. It's not going to happen. I don't think that the Democrats and liberals can go back to being just like Nancy Pelosi type, because they will just wither and die. It's not sustainable.
I agree, but I said the same thing back in 2016. You know, like this is when I left the US, it was 2017. It was right after the protests at the airports about the Muslim ban. And I was thinking to myself, oh, great. This is going to be just like the George W. Bush administration. The liberals are going to be following the left in opposing U.S. foreign and domestic policy because Bush was in office. Now Trump was in office. And I left the U.S. thinking, okay, great. This is on the right track. But then, you know, watching the U.S. from Hong Kong, seeing this Russiagate conspiracy theory be promoted by the TV channels that liberals watch and the newspapers that they read, and they got completely caught up in that. And they became an absolutely worthless lump of nothing, like no impact whatsoever, except chasing around this conspiracy theory that led to absolutely nothing. And I really worry that it might be the same thing this time. I mean, certainly the Democratic pundits on TV and newspapers have not learned a single thing based on the past few days of their analysis. They're still saying the Democrats, we moved too left. We need to move more right. We need to capture the center, chasing the stupid median voter theory that should have been eternally discredited in 2016 when Trump won, because that's a complete repudiation of the whole median voter idea. But what did they do again this year? They tried to get Republicans to vote for them. And once again, it failed. Funnily enough, they actually lost their percentage of Republicans voting by 1 point this year over 2020.
That's what they always do. That's the same in Europe. They do the same, exact same in Europe. And the problem is nobody will ever vote for liberals trying to be right wing when you can vote for the real deal. It makes just no bloody sense. So we
Yeah.
have like Labour Party in Western Europe, in the Netherlands, but also in the UK, of course. And the Labour Party also is always, every time when they lose votes, it's like, oh, we have to be tougher on immigrants, all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, if you're not an alternative to that story, people will go for the real deal. If you want to be racist, you're going to vote for racists. You're not going to vote for people who are fake racist. It's just so stupid. But on the other hand, it also makes sense because there is just no alternative for these parties because their corporate donors don't allow them to go left. So that's the only explanation that they can give.
Yeah.
It's the only explanation they can give. We can all be so outraged, like, and say, like, oh, and there they go again. They blame the left being too left and this and that. But guys, structurally, they cannot even blame being too right wing because their donors will never give them money if they would. So there is literally only one explanation possible, and we should stop being so surprised about that. They're both right wing parties. And I think Elon also said something very, very important, and that is that the United States has always been super, super good at distinguishing between foreign and domestic policy. Really, really good. Like most Americans don't know a bloody thing about foreign policy to the extent that half of Americans mix up Palestine with Pakistan. And and that's still happening. I mean, Miko Palet told us that the last time when we talked to him. And that's really, really true because I saw one time some kind of guy who went onto the streets asking about Palestine, and like half of the interview we thought he was talking about Pakistan.
Pakistilia? That sounds
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
made-up
exactly.
country.
And they're all just, to these people, they're all just like similar, like authoritarian and terrorist country. You know what I mean? But and there's something very interesting going on right now, and that's absolutely true. These distinctions are literally blurring. And I
Mhm.
think the Gaza genocide has like done such a good job. This sounds weird that I say it like that. I mean, good job in this context. But what I'm trying to say is it exposed
Mhm.
tremendously how important foreign policy is to Western societies, how much that influences our societies with Zionists beating up people, new draconian laws to arrest people who speak up against it, billions of dollars being sent every month to Israel, presidential candidates that pledge their allegiance to Israel. I mean, it's so blatant right now. And I think that now that the genie is out of the bottle, it's going to be very hard to put it back.
I think that I think that I would guess since the fall of the Soviet Union, more or less, because this was the last time we are like on a global scale, on a big global scale, on the big narrative, our political positions had any meaning and substance to them. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, when the US was left alone as the hegemon, the sole hegemon of this world, and Western Europe was practically occupied and run by the US. Uh, Politics lost connection with reality and they lost meaning. I mean, in the past generation or so, people used to talk and pontificate about this aspect of this tax code, of this move, of this, but it meant nothing in reality. It just felt unreal. It felt like disconnected. We lived in a giant disconnect. And I think that the ability to maintain this kind of almost an asylum atmosphere, because he used to talk and argue with people and it has no traction. It doesn't even touch reality. It's only talk. But what we're seeing now, and this is deeply connected to the rise of the global South, to the fact that China is now a very serious actor. It's not something that the US government can like shape like a slogan and just solve this and peddle it and that's it. Same thing with Russia and Ukraine. Listen, the Biden administration, the Democrats, went all in on the Ukraine war, and they lost. And this is a huge deal, but they don't want to talk about it. But many Trump voters do want to talk about it, and they are right, and they are correct. They are asking, what is this imperial war given us? How is it promoting anything positive in Europe, in the US, in the world? What are we doing there? Who's making the decisions? These are classic questions about government. This is what you need to be asking, but no one asked those questions. I mean, if you think about in the 2000s, after the fall of the after 9/11, when the US decided to go to war and another war and another war, no one asked a single question. No one asked a single question. But now when the US is providing Israel with endless munitions and arms day and night, people are asking questions.
And not just
And it's
that,
not even the US.
it's actually also haunting them now, because you see that with people focusing on Gaza and asking questions, they're actually starting to post also videos of all the Iraqi abuses and say, hey, look at the link, what's going on here. You see it a lot right now.
Exactly. So I think that as a civilization, we have matured. We are not the same innocent, clueless people we were 20 or 30 years ago. We have
And
matured, and so I think that the liberal establishments, which who used to run the show completely on their own, and define the terms of everything. What does it mean to be for climate? What does it mean to be for equality on gender issues? What does it mean to be good this or proper that? What does freedom of speech mean? What are you allowed to say about what the government is doing during a pandemic? Are we allowed to have a discussion about it? Should we have a discussion about it? They decided no. You should not have a discussion about it. The government can tell you to stay afoot, stay home for a whole year, and your children going crazy, and you're not allowed to ask questions. Why are you doing this? Is this appropriate? Is this helping? And so on. You are not allowed them. So they were able to control the show completely, but this ability is being taken away from them. They can't do it anymore. But they are so far removed from the even possibility to honestly consider what's going on. They're incapable of that. They had all the power, and now they're having less and less, and they can't cope. And you see the classic reaction now. This is already there was like the first moment of some kind of relief and a little bit of puzzlement. What does it mean? What's going on? What happened here? And immediately you see the old instincts kicking into play. You left wingers with your genocide craziness. It's your fault. Oh, Latinos for Trump. I see all kinds of videos. Latinos for Trumps and Muslims and Arabs. Now they can crush Gaza and make it a. They can't cope. They can't cope. They live in fantasy land. I think that not the Republican establishment, but I think the Republican voters, I think that they are keener political creatures than average liberals and Democrats. They may not have the right answers to everything, but at least they ask questions, which liberals don't.
Yeah, sadly, that there's some truth in that. I think the connection between Kareem's structural point and Alon, your point about the lack of imagination on the liberal side, they're two sides of the same coin, because you're not going to have psychologically, you're not going to have a situation happen very often where someone has a certain set of beliefs. They get paid money by donors and they say, oh, damn it, even though I really believe this other thing, I'm going to have to adopt this set of beliefs from donors because they're paying me. Much more likely is these people really believe the same things as the donor class. So there's no cognitive dissonance there. And because they believe in the view of the world that, they share in common with the donor class, all of the points we're bringing up just sound like they're coming from Mars. Because it can't be that we weren't left enough, because we hit the needle all the way to the maximum part on the dial for the left. So we can't possibly go further left. We've got to go further right. And in their heads, that's the only thing that makes sense. They have to dismiss the genocide issue as a factor at all in the election because they're unwilling to move on that. They actually believe there isn't the genocide, that they're in the right because they're, helping defend Israel against terrorism. Like they actually believe this stuff. And so they're structurally and psychologically prevented from understanding reality as it is, and then using that understanding to do anything in electoral politics. We'll see if they learn anything, if they change anything. But early indications from the liberal media. I was watching MSNBC for hours the other day.
I have to
It's not good.
I have to disagree with you a little bit here, Peter, and that's our typical disagreements that we always have. You always say don't ascribe to malice what you can ascribe to ignorance, and I always say don't ascribe to ignorance what you can ascribe to malice. I would say the power. Don't underestimate the power of money, man. Don't underestimate the power of money to make people turn. You can have politicians who have very good intentions when they go into politics, like AOC, and suddenly they start to see all these Vanity Fair front page pictures and all these high society dinners and big money, and slowly they turn. Slowly they turn because the money is too attractive, and you have a lot of these formerly so-called left wingers who actually are saying really good stuff when they start a political career. In fact, I've seen very, very old videos of Hillary Clinton. Oh man, I almost get nauseous just mentioning her name. And in these old videos, she actually said things that was almost like she was AOC at her beginning, you know? And once you get the big fat dollars, you just also change. I mean, that's the way the empire also controls the rest of the world. It's not that everybody in the rest of the world, all those comprador classes, were just born being pro-imperialist. It's just that they were paid by the imperial project, and whether it's the king of Jordan or whether it's the very right-wing Christians in Lebanon, there are ways you can just buy these people off. And I think that is a very it's just like I always say this. You can be very left wing, but imagine you have a family, kids, everything, and there's just somebody who is just offering you $200,000 every year for just spewing pro-American stuff. I think a lot of people are just sensitive to that stuff.
Well, look, starting from the Hanlon's razor, like never attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance. Just starting off, the way we're born into the world is ignorant of 100% of all knowledge. So we start off with complete, total ignorance. And then over the course of our lives, we amass some knowledge and we become 99.99999% ignorant. It's impossible to know everything. So we know that ignorance has a massive, ignorance covers the vast majority of possible knowledge people can have. Malice, if you want to say that malice is the more likely explanation, you have to start off by assuming that malice is similarly infinite, that everyone starts off with infinite malice or infinite potential for malice. And even then, it would just be equal to ignorance. So just deductively, it doesn't make any sense to ascribe to malice what could be ascribed to ignorance.
Well,
And in this
I think
case,
maybe malice
well,
is a very big word, but I mean like intentional. Yeah, like you really think that people really believe the stuff that they say.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Other than
and I just
psychopaths,
don't. I just do
other than
not.
psychopaths.
I
But you
just
see,
no. I just do not believe that people like AOC who just turned are not doing that because of the attractiveness of the position that they are in, because she said stuff that was so convincing in the beginning, and she knows what's going on. I just do not believe that that is ignorance. I think
no,
she's
even
bought off.
AOC is a great example because like when all of the left on the internet was a huge fan of her early on, we were making that judgment on the basis of very little information. She said a lot of good things, blah, 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 but we never really interrogated how well founded or solid her ideology was. Then she gets into office. She made this really interesting speech, by the way, in 2020 at a Bernie rally, 2019, where she said, once you get into Congress, all of the sources of power put you in this vice grip and try to squeeze out from you your dedication to the working class, more or less those words.
Yeah,
but the way it works is not, I mean, if you're a psychopath, yes, somebody can just pay you money and you can say, I'm going to give up the beliefs I had previously, and there's no psychological problem there. But for normal people, and I think I get this, I think, Alon, if you grew up on the right, you understand what it's like to have right-wing beliefs and a right-wing worldview that explains everything to you. So I understand intimately how it is to believe something completely different from what I believe right now. In AOC's case, I'm convinced that what happened was she gets into Congress, and who surrounds her? She gets a lot of sycophantic young people who want to volunteer, and they treat her like a queen. She brings them into her campaign, and then she has on the outside all of these people who absolutely hate her. The right has turned her into a scarecrow of terror. And so she has this distinction between these sycophantic fans and the rest of the political system that hates her. So it's so natural for her to slowly adopt this worldview, also from Sanders, that the best thing you can do is try to tweak the system to the extent you can, and the extent you can is very constrained in that worldview, and then everything else makes sense. The split between her and the left. Well, the left in the US is so tiny and disaggregated. There isn't a organization of leftists to really guide her and shape her as she's a young congressperson. What does exist is a very organized liberal block of organizations that did shape her and mold her into the politician she is today. But just psychologically, unless you want to posit that psychopaths make up a huge percentage of the ruling class,
but
it's probably disproportionate. Yeah. But other than that, it's not psychologically realistic to think that people are just dropping their beliefs because they get money. It's just not the way it works.
So I just can't completely agree. I think, first of all, psychopaths is a bit too much. I think a lot of people have very good reasons to shift their views for a bag of dollars. I don't think you need to be a psychopath for that. I think a lot of people would do that, especially if they have a family and people to feed. If you can get a good pack of dollars, a lot of people will just shift gears with regards to their opinion. And it also doesn't make sense that you have other people, like, for example, what's his name? The Lebanese guy, Rav Nader. Rav Nader is somebody who you couldn't buy off, and literally Chris Hedges talked to he often repeats that moment. Chris Hedges talked to Bernie Sanders and said, why didn't he go independent? You can just try and get that real left-wing vibe. And he said he didn't want to end up like Rav Nader. He fucking knew what was going to happen. So in other words, he is not stupid. He is not dumb. He wants to stay within the system.
Right,
and
but within his
wait. But he knows the system.
Not the way
he knows the system is a messed up, fucked up system, and he doesn't want to end up like Rav Nader. So he stays in that system and supports all the shit that it does. You're not gonna tell me he doesn't know.
I want to suggest something to you guys. I want to suggest a different perspective. Okay. I think that the focus on human psychology individually is misplaced. Because people are creatures of their political environment. This is what shapes them. So you can see in a capitalist culture like the US, organized around profit. Of course, it's going to be easier to tempt people with money because this is how people are wired. I think it's not the same. It would be different in France, for instance, or in Spain. You could offer a lot of money to a Spanish communist or a devout socialist, and you wouldn't corrupt them. So we should be. this focus on human psychology. I mean, this conversation itself, I think, is a result of a capitalist environment, because it teaches you to not look at the environment, to not look at society, what society does, what it teaches you. Instead, it's looking for big stars and big traitors, because it has this celebrity culture. Let's have but we don't need we need neither. We need normal people who are capable of making normal, drawing normal conclusions, positive conclusions from reality, based on a normal, like, perspective of point of view. So the problem is the way the U.S. is shaped as a culture, as a political culture, and it's not the people are always the same everywhere, but they develop different inclinations based on their environment. So we should look at what society does, what society teaches. This is, I think, the more socialist, the more correct way to talk about how people behave and how people respond to things. Because
But I think that
I think that just one sentence, the almost inability, and I could see, and by the way, I have to say I agree with Peter Moore. People honestly believe the dumbest, stupidest, most vicious ideas. I mean, people in Israel who are liberal Zionists, if you hear them talk, you'd be certain they are crazy, they are insane, but they really believe what they're saying. They really believe that. I mean, we have to accept this about people. We, as an animal, the human animal, we are capable of fully believing the most absurd, nonsensical bullshit imaginable. This is. I mean, we need to accept it.
Yeah, of
This
course
is
we
it.
accept it. And I also don't disagree with that completely. I'm not saying that, oh, there are not people who believe in it. I think there are a lot of people who purely believe in it. I also think a lot of people purely believe in what Trump has to say. I'm just saying that there are also quite a few people who are consciously attracted by the amount of dollars they get for changing their views. And that doesn't go against what you say, Alon. Actually, as a social psychologist, I always say how important context is, because our psychology interacts with our social context. That means that in a society, in a capitalist society that is highly competitive and where we only survive if we have at least enough means to go about in our lives, that kind of system also produces people who are attracted by that amount of money. So, in other words, if you want to get on in this kind of world, in this kind of dog eat dog world, you need to go over. You need to. Um, well, you need to. Those who get to the top are the ones who are actually willing to change their views and willing to go for the money. If not, you're just getting
I
nowhere.
will
You're
take it.
becoming
I'll
a
take it.
raffinader, so to speak.
I'll
And
take it a step further, because this is the design of the capitalist system.
yes,
This is what it's intended to do.
yes,
To create people who are so dependent upon the big economic structures
hmm
for everything, to the degree they will never be able to really think independently about anything. They will have to conform because they will have to survive.
exactly. And that's the same in
And
academia and politics everywhere.
this is the interesting point. I mean, um, I don't like to talk about people about their like personal sins, because I think the answer is never there. The answer is what kind of an environment we have when we're creating. So we are all fallible. We all make mistakes. We all believe nonsense. But I think that it is our mission as dissenters, people who want to challenge uh, common beliefs, is to challenge the way society is organized and built to produce certain kinds of results. Because I think the Bernie Sanders moment was really crucial in 2016. But this is the spell. This is the vicious circle, because in 2016, this is why it's not about Bernie and not even about Obama, because in 2016 the American system already had produced an Obama to tackle and intercept Bernie Sanders. But Obama was in the making like 20 years prior, and he was being prepared by people who had been prepared like 3 generations ago. This is how the system perpetuates itself. But in terms of American history or Western history, I think that the Bernie moment was really pivotal. It was a defining moment. When despite everything that we say and we know about America and its culture, there was real popular demand and desire for change based on like socialist principles, even if they wouldn't call them that. And they just trashed, they destroyed it. The system killed it and didn't let it grow. And I think that almost everything that happened since, I mean, this acceleration of the spiraling capitalism, which is going out of control, this is like unleashed a new phase of it, which we are still living in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to comment, Peter, and then I'll hand it to you. But the funny thing is, Peter and I was just chatting, and Peter literally said, Alon is literally discussing your most recent paper. So we don't disagree, Alon. My paper, and it's called Where is Capitalism? And it's going to be published in one of the most prominent psychology journals. It's amazing for such a radical paper, which actually takes on a very socialistic view of our capitalist societies and how they shape the tendencies that we have right now. So, for example, our individualism, for example, our materialism, and what kind of social context triggers these psychological tendencies. So, in other words, I that's why I also don't want to call them psychopaths. I people who do that, for example, they choose for the money and everything. It's not that these people are inherently evil. It's just that these kind of people are shaped in a society, in a dog-eat-dog competitive society, where being successful, where going forward, where being able to feed your family is by making money. And so a lot of people are just willing, not out of nefarious intentions, but just because of their own future possibilities, they're willing to throw away their ideas, their uh, opinions, their values, because it makes them more money. I've seen too many people change like that, also in the online world. Like, for example, that's again that capitalist context that shapes this. You have people who are very genuine content creators on YouTube. And I can give an example. Let's give a hypothetical example. I'm following Alon on YouTube. You say amazing, you give amazing monologues. I almost always agree with you full 100%. And I follow you for many years, and I can name names, but I'm not going to do that because I'm not this kind of channel. We're not this kind of channel. And you follow them for many years, and seriously, after 5 6 years, if you compare them to their first videos, they're unrecognizable. And why? They've shifted completely from extreme left wing to extreme right wing. Why? Because they noticed that the more right they became, the more donations they got from their audience, and the more views they got, and the more shares they got. So indeed, there is that question. Okay, uh, is it ignorance? Is it malice? I would say there's a bit of both. There's intention, but there's also that context that shapes you to do that. So it's a very difficult discussion. Where does that eventually come from? Because you do have people who have the will to resist that kind of attraction of money, and you do have people who do not have that will to resist that attraction of money, and they change. So there is an interaction between personality and context. You know what I mean? Do you get what I
Yeah,
mean?
I think on that we would all agree. We're getting close to the hour. I wanted to ask Alon one last question, and what I'm going to attempt to do in this question is to summarize the strongest form of the argument that some Trump supporters made as to why Trump would be the candidate of peace. So basically, I wanted to hear what you think about this regarding Israel. So the best form, the strongest form of this argument I can try to put together is that uh, starting with 2020, Netanyahu called Biden and congratulated him, and that really stuck in Trump's craw. It made Netanyahu seem disloyal. The other point is Trump has a kind of innate sense for what's popular. He's a showman. He understands that the genocide is fundamentally unpopular, so that these people would argue that Trump is likely to, through back channels, let the Israeli government know that the game's over. You've got to stop your genocide, essentially, because we're going to cut off aid. Now, of course, there's a lot of arguments on the other side, structural arguments as to why Trump would be pressured into continuing Biden's genocidal policy. But what are your thoughts? What do you think about this argument from Trump supporters who think he would actually, either through intention or incompetence, result in an end to the genocide?
I think that there isn't, for most questions, there isn't one simple answer. Trump is the candidate of peace and he is the candidate of war. I think that he is the candidate of peace for Ukraine. He is the candidate of peace for China. I think that he would be less prone to like practice brinkmanship with China and Russia in the Far East, in Europe, and to like maybe provoke or lead to a world war. I do think, however, that I think that it is very likely that he owes his presidency to a commitment he made to certain billionaire groups, that when he did become president again, he was going to get rid of the Iranian threat to Israel. I think that this is something I can't like totally dismiss as a possibility. For a while, I suspected this was what was going on, because there was a very perceptible shift after Netanyahu visited his last visit with the standing ovations and all this. A few days after that, Biden was removed basically from the ticket, and there was a Trump assassination attempt. Some fishy things were going on, but because we don't know the answer, the precise answer to this question, I'm going to again focus not on the individual, but on the wider context. And speaking as an Israeli, as someone who saw Netanyahu for a generation and a half, almost two, pushing for war with Iran, pushing for the West to take on Iran, and always increasing his grasp and the grasp of the Zionist lobby over American politics and on the American consciousness. I think that it would take a miracle for the US not to go to war with Iran. And by the way, I mean, regardless of what Trump may think or may not think as an individual, there are already other processes going on as we speak. I mean, the US military is moving units and airplanes and B-52 bombers to Israel, and another missile battery and another missile battery. And so things are happening which don't depend at all on Trump. So I think it's going to be a mixed bag in this regard. I think that and if I have to admit, We didn't talk about this at all, but we again, even wider context is that this clash between the Western world and the global South, which this is like the real big context of what's going on, and this is how we should look at the Israel, Iran West war, which I think is going to happen. I don't think that. I mean, Trump will have to be super determined to not have this war in order to stop it. And I'm not sure he's capable of that. And I think that the historical dynamics is this is the direction that we're going. This is almost at a linear pace, at a linear rate, increasing and escalating towards this. And Iran is about to attack Israel any minute and any day now. One big major attack. So what will the US do next? This is the big question of this era. This is the big question, what the US is going to do. My personal feeling and my gut feeling is that we are going to have this war. But I don't think it's going to turn out the way Israel and the US hope for.
And what do you think about the resistance reaction? I had Kevork Almashan on of Syriana Analysis, and he said something very interesting, and I also heard it from someone else called Syrian Girl. And they said that Iran and still seems to have the hopes that they can avoid this war, that they can balance between responding and deterrence and not going so far as to evoke an all-out war. And he says it's now becoming a bit it's becoming unwise, because what is happening is, he says, you can clearly see that Israel is on a rampage, that they're attacking everyone. And right now you still have the time to bind forces and engage in a coordinated attack, is what he says. But if you do nothing and just wait and wait and wait, Israel can decapitate one section after the other. First Hamas, then Hezbollah, then Syria, then Yemen. He said you can almost see how they are step by step decapitating the resistance. And he said, why are they not more aggressively right now binding forces while they are still all together and overwhelm, instead of waiting and waiting and waiting until it's their turn and they are going to lose? What do you think about that idea, Alon?
I think that the biggest card in Iran's hand, the strongest card, is that the American public is so fed up with war, they don't want to hear about another war in the Middle East. This is like across countries, across political affiliations and parties and so on. No one wants another war in the Middle East. Like 90% of Americans, I would bet, want nothing to do with it. They don't have the money. They don't have the soldiers to do it. No way. We don't want it. So this is a very strong card that Iran holds. And if Iran acts in a way that will make easier to sell a war in the Middle East to the American public, then they have made a blunder. They don't want that. So they have to always navigate in a way that, on the one hand, would show Israel and the West what they are capable of militarily, which they are doing in a big way. Again, we are being fed all kinds of manipulations and lies, but Iran is appearing very powerful militarily, very powerful, much stronger than many anticipated. And they haven't even shown everything that they have, just a little bit. But they easily penetrate Israel's air defenses, easily. They hit strategically, precisely anywhere they want to hit. We didn't know they could do it. They could do it on a large scale, repeatedly. Well, now we do. So everyone gets the message. I mean, the Arab states, the Americans, the Europeans, they get it. The Iranians, if they can penetrate Israeli air defenses, they can penetrate easily any other type of air defense in the region and in Europe and so on. So I think that the Iranians, they know Of course they know, else they wouldn't be this prepared. They know that Netanyahu, with the sway he has in Washington, wants the US. This is his biggest dream in life. This is his big mission. This is how he becomes Messiah. He gets rid of the Iranian threat to Israel. But they want to prolong this because, listen, we again, if you look at it from a certain perspective, you see Israeli successes, but there are so many Israeli failures. There's so much despair and destruction in Israel. Israel is not a happy, victorious place. It is drowning in despair every day. It is losing soldiers. Soldiers are dying. They are getting injured. They are getting PTSD. So the ability of Israel to continuously wage war for years and years, it's not all that. They can't do it forever. So I think there's a lot of strategic genius in the way the Iranians are behaving. They are extremely experienced and very, very wise. They will not act immaturely. And I think this projects a lot of confidence. They are not rushing to do anything. They're never in a rush. They are never responding like spontaneously, like in the spur of a moment. The Iranian prime minister died in a helicopter crash, a very suspicious one, not so long ago. They didn't do anything crazy. They didn't say anything crazy. They study, they prepare, they're in for the long run. They think like a 5,000-year-old civilization. This 10 years more or 10 years less is nothing to them. I think that they are planning but what I do see, this is what I always thought about Iranians, because listen, they have created Hezbollah, which is far from being defeated in Lebanon. It is destroying northern Israel. It is killing soldiers. It is wrecking IDF units. They have created this organization in methodical work for years and years. They have the Houthis. They have the Iraq militias. They built, and each and every joint in this chain is very capable and strong and can do a lot of stuff on its own. They built it with patience over many, many years. No one else did it. No one else had the vision or the capability to do it. So I think they know what they're doing. But what I do see, and which I didn't see like last year, the Iranians are willing to act with decisive violence when they see fit. They move the stage psychologically. They don't say we're going to respond someday and then disappear. They may wait a month or two, but the response is the kind of response the whole world can see. It is it's big and impressive and powerful and decisive. So they are getting out of the shadows, but at a pace that suits them. They are not in a rush. And from the Iranian perspective, when you look at the US is like an infant. It exists like 300 years. It is nothing from the Iranian perspective. I mean, they were an empire like 3,000, 4,000 years ago. What is the US with all its shenanigans? So what I can sense is Iran is gearing for war, for an all-out war with the West and the US. I can see it happening, and I think that I'm not so sure the Americans have decided that they are going to pursue this war, but they are letting things slide to this place. So they are not mainly, but not limiting Israel. So because Israel wants to involve the US in this war, they always escalate and do more and try to create more damage and provoke another reaction. and the US will be dragged into it eventually, even if they are lukewarm about this war, which they have only to lose from. They can gain nothing from this war. This will destabilize the region. This will forever change the balance of power in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf. Things that used to be will be no more. You won't have 100 American bases in the Middle East. It's not going to continue. So this is the as close as we're going to get to an actual world war, because I think that Russia and China are going to do a lot to not lose Iran to the West. They can't afford it. They don't want it. They've had enough of humiliation and domination. And now with Russia close to victory in Ukraine, they're going to have a lot of time and energy to spend on other adventures. Things are not looking good for Israel. But Iran looks like it knows what it's doing. So I know this category of people online who are why are they doing more? But I think that if they were generals, they would have been swept aside a long time ago, because this kind of impatience, this is not how you win. This is not how you win big major wars. And the person that taught me this more than anyone else is Tolstoy, because the way he describes Napoleon's invasions into Russia and in War and Peace, and the mentality that won the war for the Russian, for Kutuzov, the Russian general, only fighting with patience, never looking to exert too much power and too much energy and concentrate them on one like crucial battle, always delaying it for another day. He let the French like kill themselves and get less and less, losing people gradually in this grind, without ever giving them the opportunity of crushing him in one major battle. Always some resistance and then moving there and maneuvering. This is how you defeat an enemy of this type. And this is why I think the Iranians are part of the reason the Iranians, you will never see an Iranian John Bolton. This kind of stupidity you will never see. All the Pompeo, all the rest of they are idiots. I've never seen an idiot Iranian general or spokesperson. They are always very measured, very. You can see it's a different set of human beings. They think differently.
In boxing terms, the strategy you just described is rope-a-dope.
Yeah, this I gave Muhammad Ali. Is the big example. I mean, this is what he did against Foreman. This is how he beat Foreman. So this is, I think, is a kind of native wisdom, indigenous strategy that colonizers don't get, because they don't have this time perspective. They think like in terms of project. I need to take Indonesia by 2026, and then I need to take Malaysia in 2 years. They don't have this time perspective. It's totally different, but it's for another conversation.
Well, thank you.
You could say these have civilizational perspectives. Iran has like a civilizational, ancient civilizational perspectives, just like the Chinese and many other.
Exactly, same like China. I mean, there have been so many provocations by the US towards China, with the TikTok ban, with this tariff. You never saw them respond like angrily or impatiently. They take the time. They say, okay. I'm going to be here tomorrow. What about you? I'm going to be here the day after tomorrow. So this is a race. This is a marathon which you can't win like this with this mentality.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Alon. That was a great conversation, and looking forward to
Thank
the
you,
next one.
guys. Always a joy.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. No, definitely. This was a good one, and a little bit of a heated debate. Good. And Peter and I have that ancient disagreement. It's so funny, even in our academic work. I guess that's why we're a good. How do you say that? We're good collaborators because we give these two perspectives that actually explain a lot of the psychological phenomena that we see. But Alon, fantastic stuff again. Wise words, and hopefully we can get Asal with us soon again, and
Inshallah.
and drag Alon with us too, inshallah, and we will have another roundtable.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do that.
Okay,
See you
for you
guys.
over there, a good evening. For us, the day starts, and see you soon.
Yep.
Bye bye.
All right,
Stay safe over there in Trump land.
Yeah, I will. Bye bye.
bye.
Bye.